it's a very small number as far as the more enthusiasts that are coming. It is mostly um, all people who are already doing business in the industry. Part of that is we have all of the products and services for cultivation and extraction and retail. We have a lot on investing and even the science component, but not as much on the recreational side. So we don't see a whole lot of consumers that come to the show.
And what about on the medical side of things? I know you have some talks, some seminars, keynotes. Tell me just some of the highlights that we can expect this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So this year we are officially launching our 2-day Investor Intelligence Conference. It's going to be on the front part of the week. That is really targeted to that accredited investor. And then we roll into the conference where we're doing a dedicated hemp forum. We have a science symposium that we do in partnership with Emerald Scientific. We are continuing with our signature crash course. That's for anyone getting into the industry. It's a full day deep dive program of everything you need to know. And we're also really excited to have our keynote this year that was recently announced. Opening keynote is Mark Randolph, who is the founding CEO of Netflix. And why that's really important is that he's going to be, talking about, the point where he was launching Netflix and people were saying this model, it couldn't be done. And how many times have we heard that in cannabis? Going against, adversity, you're trying to innovate, to really push the envelope, for what is really going to be the norm around here. And, we do believe that the cannabis is going to, eventually become that norm that we see like with Netflix. So it's going to be a really interesting talk that he's going to do to open up the show this year.
That's fascinating. And you know what? He did have to push against regular networks and get himself out of that space of just being an online blockbuster. So that must have been an interesting evolution for him. But you're right. The parallels are pretty uncanny when you look at the cannabis industry. The only difference really is that in our industry, we were pushing against federal prohibition.
Yep, it's a little bit different, but I think there are a lot of really good lessons there that the cannabis industry, that we can take from, the evolution that, he's seen and the success that he had.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. Kudos to you for getting him to speak. I look forward to hearing that. And what are some of the seminars? I know you said you have the crash course, which is basically for people wanting to enter the industry. And the hemp forum is something that I think people would be really interested in. And I'd love to hear you talk about that because I have this deep belief that hemp is one of those things that can save us on so many levels. From climate change to, revitalizing marginalized farming communities and building out infrastructure that can defend against fires and climate events, floods and all of that, using hemp as a building material. So tell me about the forum.
Yeah, so the hemp forum is produced by our MJBiz Daily's sister brand is Hemp Industry Daily. And just earlier this year in June in New Orleans, we had our first Hemp Industry Daily conference where we had over 1,100 attendees actually. And at that conference, we did a lot of breakout tracks that were very deep dive, everything from strategy and regulation updates to more tactical information. And then alongside it now in Las Vegas, and we've done this for a couple years now, but we're building out the program, the Hemp Forum, where it will be heavily focused on town hall, if you will, or lots of discussion around what's happening, in the hemp industry now. So we're, for example, we're actually opening the day with a session on, 1 year, the Farm Bill 1 year later. What's changed since last year around this time, and how far do we still have to go? And then also, there are a lot of hurdles as well. So we're going to be talking about those, both, on the farm as well as, out in the business world. There's a lot of investment opportunities. So having a discussion on that and different business partnerships that, could come out of this. And then I think the big thing too is in the past year, we've been very focused on, the Farm Bill, and now that we're in a legalized state or country for this, but what's going on internationally? Where are those opportunities around the world for hemp?
And no doubt there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, and there are countries that are well ahead of the United States when it comes to hemp infrastructure, and
Hmm.
the uses of hemp are so much more compatible with the earth, if you will. From a sustainability standpoint, making textiles like polyester and materials that require fossil fuels,
Hmm.
everything from fabrics to paper. It seems as though we have an opportunity here with this push to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels, to take hemp and use it to replace fossil fuels for everything from toilet paper to the plastic bags you get in grocery stores to composites for making cars to uh, the materials that are used for buildings, for concrete and with hempcrete and all of that. But it's a matter of infrastructure at this point. Other countries tend to have a little bit, the countries that use hemp tend to be a little farther ahead, and they have the resources and infrastructure necessary to start implementing the application of hemp to replace these more toxic materials. So, do you have people that are going to be speaking to that?
I would have to leave that question to my conference content team. They're really the ones who are recruiting speakers for all of these topics, and know it a little bit more deeply than I do.
Understood. Yeah. You know what? I will follow up with them about that because
Hmm.
I'm interested in knowing about it, and maybe I can get some information online.
Hmm.
But also, the Emerald Scientific, what is that?
Yeah, so Emerald Scientific is a partner of ours that they really focus on uh, cannabis for and the science of it. They do have some of their own events throughout the year, and then they partner with us on a couple of ours. So when we were in Toronto for MJBizCon International, we partnered on a science program there, and then they also do a full day deep dive on the science of cannabis as well in Las Vegas.
You mean with local Las Vegas businesses?
So they cover topics they do some regulatory updates on the cannabis science components. They talk about cultivation and genetics, analytics and um, hemp science, clinical research. They really are hyper focused on those areas, and they work with us to produce a full day track of content for that speaks to the science of the cannabis industry. Whereas MJ BizCon, we focus and stay a little bit more with on the business strategy and components there. So it gives us a very well-rounded education program for the week.
I would think so. So let's go back to the investors,
Hmm.
because people who are looking for opportunities, unsure of where to go for money to start new businesses. There are investors who really want to get into the space but haven't really, found their footing yet. I also know that, with the SEC and the trading and all of that, there have been some issues bringing, like, for instance, Canadian companies over to the US stock exchange, and now it seems to be a lot more commonplace that that's happening. What are some of the things in the investor segment of the conference that you'll be able to address?
So, so that full program has not been released yet. So I can't give away too much on that, but we do talk a lot about the state of cannabis investing, institutional investing, valuations in the market, and how to evaluate companies and evaluate the pitches that you're hearing. And then, a lot of these investors who are, they're investors first, and they're interested in getting into cannabis. Um, they need to know about like the impact of legalization and regulation, for investors, and what space is safe for them to play in. So, but both of those, or the full day program is a lot on, has a lot of Q&A with actual investors that we're going to be bringing in. We are also partnering with ArcView and Cowan to host programs on the second day of the conference that will just, really round out the full investment program for the week.
That'll be great, actually. And what about banking? People in the banking industry. I had an
Hmm.
interview recently with a dispensary owner who has had issues with banking to the point where his LLC doesn't have the word cannabis in it, but eventually banks realize, after they look a little more closely, they'll shut him down. And he's been through, a number of banks, and one had a good run for like 3 years, but others, they realize that it's cannabis industry and they say, oh well, we can't service this even though it's legal to.
Hmm.
And now he's finding that banks are charging ungodly amounts of money to hold these accounts for the cannabis industry, which just seems so incredibly unfair. It'd be interesting to hear from investors who have had that issue, or people who are in the industry have had that issue. Will you be talking about that at all at the conference?
Absolutely. I think, there's still a lot to between now and December that, could come out with safe banking. So I think we are definitely planning on covering those, but, what that discussion, is going to be, I think is going to be heavily determined on what happens in the next 2 months.
Yeah, and if we can get the Senate to actually take a floor vote on the States Act, we'll be in really good shape.
Hmm.
Because I
Absolutely.
think it'll pass the Senate. I don't see any reason that it should be held up. So, and this is just a reminder to everyone listening: call your senators or write to them and tell them to enact this incredible piece of legislation, because it really is going to open a lot of doors for a lot of people who have felt mm, thwarted by regulation, the banking and all of that. Oh, it'll
Mhm.
be interesting. But
Mhm.
so, what else have we not covered?
What have we not covered? So, outside of the really great content that we're going to have there, we're really excited. Our exhibit hall is already sold out. We have over 1,300 companies that are going to be participating in the expo hall this year, which is just such a phenomenal thing for the entire industry, that there is such enthusiasm and such just success that we're all seeing, that the industry is moving forward. And, just coming from last year, so in 2018, attendance was just a little bit over 27,000. And, this year we're already on track to be, 35,000 and beyond. So, that's kudos to all, I think, everybody in this industry, that we all get to celebrate this together. And as such, one of our we always have a industry give back type program that we do at all of our events, just to continue that um, um, overall support of the industry, not just within cannabis, but outside as well. And one of the things that we're doing this year is we're starting a program that we are calling Associations Day. It'll be on Tuesday, December 10th. And